Good afternoon and welcome to the budget standing meeting for Wednesday, February 8th. Calling the meeting to order, and I'm going to ask Councillor McPherson to read the land acknowledgement.
We recognize that the lands on which we are gathering are home to many past, present, and future First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. St. Catharines is located on the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. The Niagara territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. This land acknowledgement is important because it reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of Indigenous peoples in our community and across Turtle Island. We offer our sincere gratitude and respect to the original and continued stewards of this land. This acknowledgement is our declaration of our collective responsibility to take action for a better world, one that is free from oppression, discrimination, and racism.
Thank you, Councillor McPherson. The next item on the agenda is the appointment of the chair and the vice chair. We'll do the chair appointment first. Councillor Garcia has advised that he would like to put his name forward to be considered for the position of chair, and Councillors McPherson and Phillips have put their name forward for the position of vice chair. Is there anybody else who would like to put their name forward for the position of chair?
Kristen, did you say my name?
Did I say your name? I didn't mean to.
For vice chair? I think it should have been Councillor Dodge.
That should be Councillor, sorry. Councillor McPherson and Councillor Dodge.
That's better.
So focusing on the chair, anyone other than Councillor Garcia? So not seeing anyone wishing to put their name forward, I'd look for a motion to appoint that the Budget Standing Committee appoint Councillor Garcia as chair of the Budget Standing Committee for the 2022 to 2026 term of council. And I see Councillor Dodge has her hand raised to move that. And looking for a seconder, Mayor Cisco, I see your hand up. Sorry about that. So to appoint Councillor Garcia as the chair, Councillor Dodge? Yes. Councillor Mayor Cisco?
Yes.
Councillor McPherson? Yes. Councillor Phillips?
Yes.
Councillor Ratzlaff? Yes. And Councillor Garcia?
Yes.
And that's carried. And Councillor Garcia can join me up here and he'll take over to chair the rest of the meeting.
Thank you, Kristen. So for the position of vice chair, we will need to go to a ballot system. So far, Councillors Dodge and McPherson have submitted their name. Does anybody else want to submit their name for vice chair? Seeing none, we are going to go to a ballot system, and those who are joining by Zoom, please email your selection to City Clerk Kristen Sullivan and Sarah McWilliams. Please, only one vote per person for the position of vice chair. Votes will then be tallied, and committee will then vote to approve the position of vice chair.
Kristen, you did receive my email, correct?
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
So the ballots were counted, and Councillor Dodge, your name had the most votes. So Councillor Garcia will call for a motion to appoint Councillor Dodge as the vice chair.
Okay. Can I have a councillor move the motion that the Budget Standing Committee appoint Councillor Dodge as Vice Chair of the Budget Standing Committee for the 2022 to 2026 term of council? Councillor McPherson, can I have a seconder? Okay. Sorry?
Councillor Phillips.
Councillor Phillips?
I'll second that motion.
Yeah, I have trouble seeing that. Okay, and Councillor Ratliff, did you want to speak? Okay. Okay, so, yes.
So I just wanted to make a motion to put on the floor, we can change the term limit from 4 years to 2. I'm seeing up there that it's 4, so maybe I need to make that motion now before we vote.
Okay, so Councilor Ratliff is making a motion that the term
Yeah.
for vice chair, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, actually, I wanted to do that for both the chair and but I guess we already voted for the chair. What?
Okay, so, and so that the budget committee, okay. So this is, okay, we've already got, I'm sorry, Kristen, I need your advice here.
Yep, so you would look to Councillor McPherson as the mover to see if she agrees if that's friendly or not.
Okay. Councillor McPherson, is that a friendly amendment? Okay. Okay, so I believe we have to vote first on that amendment, is that correct?
Yes, well, a member of council can request that it be voted on separately, and if not, then the committee would just vote on the motion as it is shown on the screen right now.
Okay, so, so the motion, for everybody's understanding, is that the Budget Standing Committee appoint Councilor Dodge as Vice Chair of the Budget Standing Committee, but for the 2022 to 2024 term of council, not for the full term of council. So, does anybody want to speak to that? Councilor Dodge? Sorry, go ahead.
Can we split the vote? Separate it?
Yes, I'm sure we can. So we're going to separate the vote. So first of all, we were saying that we want to vote on the fact that the BSC appoint Councilor Dodge as Vice Chair of the Budget Standing Committee. And then we will vote on the term separately?
So you would vote on the term first, because that's the amendment.
Okay.
And then whether that carries or not, the next vote would be on whether or not Councillor Dodge is appointed. So if the shorter term is approved, then the motion that the committee would then consider would be appointing Councillor Dodge for 2 years.
Okay, so we're going to vote first on the term being 2022 to 2024. Does anybody else want to speak to that?
Mayor Cisco has his hand up.
Who does?
Mayor Cisco.
Okay.
So you just ask him to speak.
Chair, do I have the floor?
Sorry, Mayor Cisco, I'm learning how to work with the Zoom here, so you have the floor.
That's okay. It took me quite a while to figure out what I was doing up there, so I understand. I would just say that I think splitting the term is a good idea. I think it provides an opportunity for the Budget Committee to come back halfway through the term. If there are others that are interested and some members who have decided they want to step back, it provides a chance for everybody to reset. So I'll be supporting the 2-year term.
Okay, does anybody else want to speak to that? Councilor Phillips.
Yeah, I'll support that. It's, it's similar to what happened as far as deputy mayor is concerned. Originally, it was talked about being 4 years, and then we split it into, or dropped it down to a 2-year term. I'm sure Councillor Dodge is going to do an excellent job. And she would be able to put her name forward, as would I, at the end of the 2nd year. And if council decides, or if this budget committee decides that somebody else should do the job, fine. But if Councillor Dodge wants to maintain the position, she can put her name forward, and council or this committee will vote on it. That's fine with me.
Thank you for that. Councilor Dodge.
Then just take the amendment off, or I won't ask for a split.
Sorry, what did she say?
She doesn't need to be a separate vote.
Okay. So it's going to be one vote.
One vote.
Yeah. So we're going to have one vote, so I will ask the clerk to call the question, get some recorded votes, please.
Okay, we're going to start with Councillor McPherson.
Yes.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Ratzlaff.
Yes.
Mayor Cisco.
Yes.
Councillor Dodge. Yes. Councillor Garcia.
Yes.
And that's carried.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the chair's report. And I should say that, first of all, that I'm not in favor of lengthy chair reports, and I wanted to say something tonight being the first meeting of this new budget committee, but I will try to keep it short. So welcome everyone to this council terms edition of the Budget Standing Committee. As I said, I don't believe in lengthy chairs reports, but I felt that I should share my thoughts for this initial meeting. First of all, I'm honored to be chosen by my colleagues because this, in my opinion, is the most important committee of council because of the far-reaching impact it has on both capital and operating budgets and other expenditures. I had volunteered to be on the committee initially because I believe my extensive business experience would really be helpful. Chairing the committee, however, takes it to another level, and I certainly don't take that lightly. And I have some really big shoes to fill because Mayor Cisco did such an outstanding job as chair. I will definitely try my best to run efficient meetings. I believe we have a great team on the committee and look forward to working with each and every one of you and our excellent staff. Of course, I have known every one of you for quite a while, except for Councilor Ratzlaff. Councilor Ratzlaff, being new, will bring a fresh perspective, which is always welcome. My approach on this committee and all of my council work is to focus on the needs of our taxpayers. They are the ones who elected us to represent them, and I believe balancing the services they require while minimizing tax increases are huge priorities for us in this committee. Every budget is tough, but this year will be a particular challenge. First, we're adapting to a post-pandemic world, and also we just approved some very sizable increases for 2023. In addition, we're expecting what could be also a very sizable increase from the region, and we haven't dealt with water and wastewater yet, which we're going to have on today's agenda. Those are my thoughts. Let's get to work. Can I have a motion to adopt today's agenda? Councilor Dodge, I believe, I have to keep looking at Zoom, I'm sorry. So I have Councilor Dodge moving the agenda. Do I have a seconder? Councilor Phillips? And all in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay. So it's carried. There are no minutes, obviously, to review. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? People who drink water. Just joking a little bit. Anyway, no declarations of interest, but as a reminder, just like a council, councilors are required to submit written statements of declaration to the clerk and council coordinator. Again, the next item would be a motion to move consent reports, and there are no consent reports. So the next item on the agenda is the big item we have today, which is financial management services, water and wastewater budget and associated rates. Prior to discussing this report, we will receive a presentation from city staff. So now I call of Mark Green, Manager of Environmental Services, and Lucia Shen, Manager of Financial Planning, to present.
Okay, good afternoon. Thank you for having us. Is this, might have jumped ahead a slide or two. But yeah, so today we're going to provide some high-level information about the proposed 2023 water and wastewater budget and hopefully answer any questions that you have. So, next slide. So in terms of, and probably as most of you know, in terms of the responsibility for the water system, it's divided into three parts. First is the regional government's responsibility. They treat the water and have the large transmission water mains. The city is responsible for all the distribution water mains to bring water from door to door to all the customers. And the last bit is the private water service and the private plumbing within the private residences and businesses. So it's shared into those three parts. Similarly, on the wastewater side, responsibility also has the same thing. So as the water goes down the drain, it goes through the private plumbing, through private water service to the road. The sewers in the road are owned and operated by the city, and they ultimately drain to larger trunk sewers owned and operated by the region of Niagara, and ultimately to the treatment plants before it's treated and discharged back into the environment, in our case into Lake Ontario. And so in terms of that shared responsibility between the city and the region, as you can see on this slide, how the city's, the controlled cost by the city compared to the cost controlled by the region. So on the water side, for water expenditures, approximately 55% of those total costs are controlled by the city. On the wastewater side, 28% of the costs are controlled by the city, and 72% controlled by the region. So when you combine those two together, this total city controlled costs for the water wastewater rates are 40%, and the region controlled are 60%. In terms of asset classes, the water and wastewater are very large assets. This graph here shows the total replacement costs in millions. And so this pie chart here has all the city's assets, so water, wastewater, roads, bridges, splash pads, arenas. As you can see, approximately 50% of all the assets are water and wastewater. The replacement value of water is $1.366 billion, and the replacement value of our wastewater system is $1.627 billion. And those together are about 50% of all of the city's assets. Should be noted, approved with the 2023 capital budget, obviously we need to reinvest in our system, are $14.8 million of project costs, of which $11.6 million are funded through the water and wastewater rates. The next slide is just an example. This shows the current water main break rates. So in 2022, we had 89 water main breaks across the city. As you can see, they're all over from north to south, east to west. Typically, there are around 100 water main breaks a year, and obviously we need to reinvest in our infrastructure to help keep the rates as they are. Otherwise, the number of breaks will continue to increase. Next slide. So I think, as we all know, the cost of construction has been increasing steadily over the last few years, and that's especially true when it comes to the cost of underground services like water and sewers. This chart is showing the price to replace a meter of water main. So each of those red dots is an individual tender price in terms of the cost to replace a meter of water main, and the blue line is the annual average. You can see just in the last few years, so before the pandemic, 2018, 2019, it was approximately $1,200 to replace a meter of water main, and as of last year, it was $1,600 to replace a meter of water mains. So approximately a 30% increase in cost to install just before the pandemic till now. And as a result of the price increases, if budgets are maintained at similar levels to previous years, that means that fewer underground assets can be renewed on an annual basis, and our infrastructure deficit will continue to increase. In terms of operational challenges, we have two. On the wastewater side, the challenge is infiltration, which is rainwater entering into the sewer system. This provides a number of challenges, including reducing capacity in terms of new development that we can add to the system. It increases the treatment cost, the amount of wastewater that has to ultimately be treated, and also can increase the risk of basement flooding. So keeping those flows out of the system are important. On the water side, it relates to leakages, and every time there's a water main break, we have, again, clean water kind of being released. So trying to reduce those. Historically, a lot of our actions were more reactive. So, when it was broke, we would go fix it. We're trying to move to a more proactive manner to try and address some of these before they happen. Next slide, please. Also, probably as most of you know, the province has brought through Bill 23, More Homes Built Faster Act. A few years ago, through the planning department, they did a land needs assessment to determine the city's existing planning framework could handle about 15,000 new units across the city by 2051. With the new provincial act under Bill 23, the new target is 11,000 units by the year 2031, so front-ending a lot of that. Obviously, in the urban area, every new unit is going to need water and wastewater services, so we need to ensure that we have the system and understand the system so we can have this growth without problems. So next slide, please. So another requirement coming in from the province is new rules around our wastewater and stormwater systems. So the stormwater system is outside of the scope of our discussion today, but in terms of the wastewater system, the current process is we have approvals for basically each section of pipe, and it's a one-time approval. We have hundreds and hundreds of them across the city. The challenge is St. Catharines, similar to a lot of other municipalities, we have these large infrastructure deficits, and there needs to be more focus on these systems. Sometimes they can be kind of out of sight, out of mind. So the new process that the province is bringing in is trying to bring it up a level and make municipalities more accountable for how we operate our systems. It kind of mimics the framework that was brought in for the drinking water side after Walkerton. So we're going to get one system-wide approval for our wastewater system with a number of operating conditions for it. So next slide. So there's approximately 70 new conditions coming in. I have put some examples here, including enhanced operation and maintenance requirements, new reporting requirements to the Ministry of the Environment and the public, sampling, monitoring, and one of the big changes is related to operating conditions, which is ensuring at all times the systems are properly operated and maintained, including effective performance and adequate funding, adequate operator staffing and training. And the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks will be coming in and inspecting our system on an annual basis to ensure that we're complying with all these new requirements. It's very similar to the new, the existing framework, again, for the drinking water side, where the ministry comes on site every year to inspect us, to make sure the water's safe, so we can be confident to all the residents that we're providing clean, safe drinking water. Next slide. So this is the kind of final thoughts I will leave you with. Climate change is happening. Obviously, it's affecting all communities, including St. Catharines. These are long-term projections, of course, but the infrastructure we're putting in place now needs to last a long time. So if we want pipes to last, 50, 75, 100 years, we have to deal with the weather that we're going to get in 50, 75, 100 years from now. So trying to factor in climate change into that as we're building these new systems. And when we did our climate adaptation plan, one of the big challenges the city has is extreme rainfall and the increased risk of basement flooding. So as we rebuild our systems, as we can build a more resilient, that's going to help protect our residents now and also for generations into the future. So thank you for those comments. Those are my comments, and I will turn it over to Lucia.
Thank you, Mark. In 2019, both the City Council and Niagara Regional Council approved their 10-year water and wastewater financial plans as required under the Safe Drinking Water Act. The city's current time period for the plan is from 2020 to 2029. The financial plan guides the decision-making and annual budget targets to ensure the city's water system is financially viable. It also outlines resources required to accomplish the program goals, including staffing, equipment needs, and increases in capital spending. In order to mitigate the physical impact of COVID-19, in both 2021 and 2022 budget, the city has temporarily reduced its planned investment in the water, sanitary sewer, and pollution control projects and deviated from the rate increase target set out in the financial plan. When the financial plan was developed, it was very clear that the major driver of the need for increased rates and revenue for the city of St. Catharines was the capital investment needs. And with the COVID-19 impact, it is even more critical for the city to catch up with a capital infrastructure investment that has been reduced over the COVID years. Also, as Mark mentioned before, with the increasing cost of construction, especially related to the underground services, there will be the need for the city to increase capital investment in future year water and wastewater budgets. The city will be updating its water and wastewater financial plan this year, with 2024 being the 5-year point, and review the requirement under the Act for update and council approval in 2024. Next slide, please. So Mark has already showed the cost sharing between the region and the city in one of his slides. This is to take a deeper dive at the 2023 expenditure budget of water and wastewater. The pie chart on the left shows the breakdown of the major types of expenditures funded by the water budget. For the 2023 proposed water budget, the largest expenditure component is associated with the purchase of portable water from the region, which is equivalent to 45% of the total water expenditure. The next highest expenditure item is capital investment for water main replacement, including rate support, capital of the revenue to capital projects, and debt repayment. That's equivalent to 28% of total water expenditure. The remaining 27% represents city's operating costs for water system, including water system maintenance, water billing and collection, and water meter maintenance. So overall, the region control cost takes up 45% of water expenditures, and city control portion takes up 55%. Similarly, the next pie chart shows the breakdown of the major types of expenditure funded by the wastewater budget. For the 2023 proposed wastewater budget, the largest expenditure component is associated with fixed wastewater charges from the region, equaling to 72% of the total wastewater expenditure. Then there is the capital investment for sewer replacement and pollution control, capital projects, including rate support, capital of the revenue, and debt repayment. And that translates to 14% of total wastewater expenditure. The remaining 14% represents the city's operating costs for sewer system, including sewer system maintenance, the FLAP program, lateral replacement, drain cleaning, and pollution control program. Overall, the region control cost takes up 72% of wastewater expenditure, and city control portion takes up 28%. So the next slide is a graph showing the overall 2023 proposed water and wastewater budget. What is the split between fixed and variable costs? So the fixed cost represent the fixed portion of the regional charges for the water and wastewater, and the city's capital-related investment, including rate support, capital of the revenue for water mains and sanitary sewer projects, and debt repayment. The variable costs represent the volumetric portion of the cost of water purchase from the region, as well as the city's operating cost for water and wastewater systems. So as we can see on the chart, overall 65% of the total expenditure is considered fixed, with only 35% is variable. So how are the water and wastewater expenditures being funded? 2023 total expenditure between the region and the city is at $65.5 million. So that is offset by $61.1 million water and wastewater rate revenue and $4.4 million from the city's water and wastewater reserve. As we can see in the chart, the city is essentially balancing the water and wastewater budget, utilizing the reserve with the consideration of rate increases and the affordability of the city's ratepayers. As a result, the forecasted water and wastewater reserve balance at the end of 2023 is currently at $4.5 million. As part of the rate setting process, city staff analyzed the water purchased based on 3 separate seasons of the year. Represented on the graph is the summer season colored in blue, the shoulder season colored in pink, and the winter season colored in green at the bottom. It is evident from the graph that all 3 seasons have declining water purchases over the past 2 decades, with a slower rate in recent years. So the most volatile line of the 3 is the blue line at the top, representing summer water usage. For the 2023 budget, staff have used 14.5 million cubic meter to calculate city's water purchase cost, which aligns with the recent 5-year average, and it is slightly higher than the 2022 actual of 14.3 million cubic meters. Next slide. The city's current water and wastewater rate structure is a combination of fixed and volumetric charges. The fixed portion is calculated to recover the cost of water main and sewer replacement program budgets. The remainder of the costs are recovered through the volumetric portion. So after accounting for the trends, patterns, and costs previously discussed, the proposed water and wastewater rates for 2023 are represented in this table on the screen. As we can see from the table, the overall annual increase for a average ratepayer consuming 170 cubic meters per year is $84.58, or a percentage increase of 8.97%. This is equivalent to $1.63 per week and 23 cents per day. So staff have done a calculation. The 2023 proposed rates represent 36% of the bill is to pay for fixed costs, and 64% is to pay for variable costs. Whereas, as we have shown earlier, 65% of the city's total cost is fixed and 35% is variable. So there is inconsistency between the fixed versus variable cost and fixed versus variable fees. The city is on the path to gradually correct the inconsistency to make the shift in the rates between fixed and variable fees. Looking at how the city's 2023 average water bill measures up with our municipal comparators, the rates shown on the screen are the most current rates available and include several rates from 2022. As you can see from the chart, City of St. Catherine proposed 2023 water and wastewater rates are below the average of all of our municipal comparators. Switching to how the city's bills compare across our region. Again, we compare the most current rates available, which included several rates from 2022. As we can see from the green bar towards the bottom, St. Catherine proposed water and wastewater rates are well below the average in Niagara as well. Looking at the 2023 water and wastewater rates in a different way, residents can either pay 7 cents to drink 12 liters of water, or go to the grocery store and pay $3.99 for the same amount of water. With the proposed 2023 rates, for $1.69 less, residents can not only drink the same amount of water, but they can also take a shower, do a load of laundry, run the dishwasher, and bathe the kids. Mr. Chair, that concludes our presentation today. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucia and Mark. Do any of the members of the committee have any questions about the presentation? Councilor Ratliff, trying
Thank
to
you.
get you going here.
No, that's okay.
Please go ahead.
Thanks for the presentations. I was lucky enough to hear this earlier today and got to ask a bunch of questions. You guys did well, twice in one day. I guess just two lines of questioning that aren't directly related to the budget. So like maybe there's a better time to ask these questions. And if there is, just I'm open to that feedback. But through Chair Councilor Garcia, the first one is about sewage and like during, and I'm sure you've thought about this, but it kind of keeps me up at night. So we still have some combined water, wastewater, and sewage places where that's combined in the city. During like a storm, when that's overwhelmed, I'm assuming there's a relief valve of some kind, and we get a situation where raw sewage is not being treated properly. Is that the case?
Yes, through the chair, yes, that's correct.
So how then do you prioritize, like, how are you, like, so we have an infrastructure deficit, and you've talked a little bit about how we're funding, how we're addressing that deficit, and part of that is, I'm assuming, separating wastewater and sewage, where it is still combined. But how does that like rank on the priority, or how do you approach that when you're thinking about it? And, you know, do you worry about that as well?
Thank you for the question. I believe we should direct the question either to Director Martouche or Director Smith.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Budget Chair. Yeah, we do prioritize combined sewer overflow. We actually do work trying to separate those flows as much as possible. In the past, we've also installed combined sewer overflow tanks to help mitigate those types of concerns. And part of the reg that has come out with consolidated infrastructure goes to do further investigation and reporting on those types of events as well. But they are prioritized in our programs, and we do our best to mitigate those types of events throughout the year. I don't know, Mark, if there's anything you want to add to that.
I would just add, yeah, it's a large problem because we have a lot of older systems, so it's still going to take a long time until we get to the point where we don't have these combined sewer systems. But yeah, they're being worked on like every year to separate part of the system and reduce that impact year over year.
And then to the chair, just a follow-up question, if I may. In Hamilton, they had an issue where there was raw sewage going into the lake, and I think that was partly due to lack of transparency, but would you just comment on how we're making sure that doesn't happen here in our city?
Yeah, I can start with, so just a few years ago, the city did what we call like a Zoom camera inspection. So they put a camera down every single manhole in the city, both on the sanitary sewer side and the storm side, to kind of take a picture down it, which looked at the condition in that area. So we want to know, the condition of those pipes for our asset management purposes, but also kind of confirm the flows and how the pipes were hooked up. So there still can be issues like that. Someone can do illegal plumbing in their home or something that we would not be able to catch. There's no, so it's not impossible. But in terms of how the actual pipes are hooked up in the roads, we're pretty confident how that is. So never say never, but it's very unlikely that there's a situation like that in St. Catharines.
Excellent, thank you. So I just had one more question, if I may.
Please go ahead.
I spent some time just yesterday in Dominican Republic where they don't have safe drinking water, and safe drinking water is pretty important. It's just interesting to me, and just correct me if I'm thinking about this wrong or if I need more information. But like with drinking water, something that's essential for life, we charge a user fee, right? So those who use the most water pay the most, and those who use the least pay the least. But like with other services that are less essential, we don't charge any user fees. So everyone pays the same through their taxes for services that they don't use as much as others. Thinking of roads, right? Where roads aren't as essential as water, and yet, there's no user fee attached to them. Am I thinking about that correctly, or is there information that I'm missing?
I think you make some good points, but I will ask Director Douglas to please address that.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair, to the councillor. One of the differences between the water and wastewater system and, the road network that you're referring to is that there is legislation in place that does require us to be 100% full cost recovery on the costs that we incur to operate the system, and that the users who are benefiting and using that system are paying for. So there's a little bit of difference, and I think the biggest one is the legislated requirement for 100% users that use the system pay the cost of the system.
Just we'll follow up then. So is the thinking behind that we don't want another Walkerton. We need the water system to be like it's not a matter of risk management with the water system as so much as it is maybe risk management with roads. Is that the thinking behind the legislation that requires us to be full cost recovery?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the councillor, I believe that's part of the situation with the water and wastewater system. One of the big differences also with the water and wastewater system is that with the Safe Drinking Water Act, we're required to have the financial plan for the water and wastewater system, and now even we're going to be doing that with the sanitary and storm sewer systems. And when we look at our asset management plan and for our core assets, it was evident, and I can allow Director Martuccio to speak further, but having that water and wastewater plan requirement in place, it did have the city providing more dollars towards the investment in our assets than some of our other asset classes. So I do think the legislation for the water and wastewater system does help protect the users of the system to ensure it's clean and safe for all of us to drink, as well as us being able to put the required dollars in place to maintain and replace and upkeep the infrastructure that supply that system.
Yeah, thanks. It's helpful.
Thank you, Director. I believe I had Councilor Phillips next in the order here.
Thank you, Chair. And as I mentioned to the clerk, I do have to leave right after I finish. When I finish asking my questions and making a comment. First of all, I guess to Anthony or to Daryl, as far as the CSOs are concerned, do we have enough, or are we going to have to install more? Are they functioning as you'd hope they would?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, we do have a pollution control plan that we are currently completing, which will help us to address some of the outstanding issues that we have within our system. As of right now, I don't believe we have any plans for the addition of any CSO tanks to our existing inventory, and the ones that we do have are operating as intended.
Okay, thank you. And just a comment through you, Chair. With this, after this comes and is voted on by council, and it is passed, we have to communicate properly to the public to say, okay, your costs are going up $85. Here's where those $85 are being spent. They don't necessarily need to know how much it is a day or a week. they see $85 as the number, and they need to know exactly where that those $85 are going. And I would suggest two things in the handout that you give to the residents, and one being show that we are one of the cheaper municipalities in the region as far as cost of water is concerned, number one. Number two, I would go with frequently asked questions, such as, I'm using less water, but my expenses are going up. Why is that happening? Give an answer to that. Because as counselors, we're going to get, I've been around long enough, I get the same questions every year almost. The frequently asked questions, if they're on that document that's given to the public, it's going to save us a lot of time, and you can probably answer them a lot better than we can. So, there's probably 4 or 5 very regular questions that we get. If that is part of the brochure, it's going to save a lot of anxiety, I think. And with that, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Congratulations to you and Councillor Dodge on your recent successes of being on the administration of this BSC.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips. And I believe I have Mayor Cisco next, but before that, Director Martuccio, for anybody watching, could you please explain what CSO tanks are?
Sure. I guess very basically, it's where our combined sewer pipes would, during high water events, whether it's in the middle of a storm, it's where the excess water would go and be stored until the storm subsides, and the sewer system can then take that flow back into the regular sewer system to take it to the treatment plant. If that, if the tanks are, I guess, if their capacity exceeded, that is then obviously where the sewage, like you said, would be let into the environment.
Thank you for that. Mayor Cisco?
Thank you, Chair. And I will say thank you for the clarification. There are always residents at home and they may not know all the acronyms, so I appreciated the decision to ask for clarification there. I'm just going to echo what Councillor Phillips mentioned with respect to the communications piece. I think that we should be highlighting very clearly the quality of our infrastructure and the investments that have been made, and the comparison between our municipality and other Niagara area municipalities. I think that's a key part of the conversation we should be having publicly, showing people that we have a very high quality infrastructure, but at a very comparatively low cost compared to the rest of the region. And I liked Councillor Phillips' suggestion about an FAQ. I think that would make sense as well. The one thing I will add, and that I think needs to be explained to folks, the simple reality that when it comes to our water and wastewater system, the vast majority of the actual costs of the system are fixed. They're not based on the volumetrics. We use the volumetric as an incentive / disincentive to conserve water, but ultimately it's not about a cost-cutting measure necessarily, because the system costs essentially the same amount every year. That's more on the environmental side of things. And I think people need to understand, I believe, if you go back 20 or 30 years, a lot was said about the idea of reducing use to save money. And while I understand the motivation at the time, that was the wrong message to be sending to the community, because the water system, the wastewater system, they cost the same amount of money, essentially. It has more to do with the pipes in the ground and the need to repair and replace those pipes in the ground than it does to actually process the water. So whatever communications go out, I know I raised this at the wastewater budget workshops that were done by staff. But I will raise it again because I think it's important that point of clarification be a part of whatever communications are being put out there. And I'll just close, Chair, by thanking staff. I thought the information sessions that were run previous to today's meeting have been very helpful in gaining a good understanding of why this budget is the way it is. And yeah, I look forward to the debate at council, although unfortunately there can't be much debate, but getting the word out to the community just how lucky we are and how blessed we are to have the system that we have in place.
Thank you. Mayor Cisco. I have Councilor McPherson next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to say I slightly disagree when it comes to the communications and a frequently asked questions. As someone who lives and breathes websites and marketing on a daily basis, no one ever reads them. It's more about a story, and as we have lowered our attention span to that of about 8 seconds per human being, I really like the framing of it from a, like, what you pay if you buy the bottles of water versus that one. Really, that's an easy one for people to get. No offense to those who like frequently asked questions sections, but my marketing hat tells me they're useless. My question is around the Bill 23 and the impact that's going to have on, because we're accelerating the number of homes or units that need to be built. And it doesn't really have to do with this budget, but I'm just trying to grapple with, are there areas that will be focused on when it comes to, clearly those are, areas that are going to have development, like around the Ontario Street property, Queenston, the old General Hospital, downtown. Sorry? Geneva and Scott. Yeah, Geneva and Scott. Are those kind of going to be made priorities just because that's where the building and the homes are going to be? And how is that going to be balanced kind of with the whole plan for across the city?
Through Mr. Budget Chair, I'll try to address that question. It's a loaded question, to be honest with you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, no problem. So yeah, no, the engineering staff are currently looking at doing master servicing plans for both water, wastewater, and our storm systems to get a better understanding of how our systems are performing. The added pressures from development come down to just being able to service those developments with water and sewer, and our systems being able to handle that extra capacity. It all comes down to where the development's going, whether or not it could be as simple as there's a combined sewer there, and if we take the stormwater out of that combined sewer, there's enough wastewater capacity. But we do have to do a holistic plan to better understand how our system is performing, what capacities exist in it, where we need to focus works for additional capacity, and where we can relieve our systems in other areas. So that's why I'm saying it's a loaded question. It's not a very simple question to answer, but it will have an effect on our water wastewater budget moving forward, because it's just more infrastructure that we need to take care of, which is that fixed part of our water wastewater rates. As we get better understanding of where these developments are going, we'll have a better understanding of what the needs are for our system.
Thank you. And I guess the last question I have is just the lifespan of pipes, because I think that we all assume, we can just replace the pipes easily and quickly. But what's the average lifespan of any one of the pipes?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, I guess the published lifespan of pipes is anywhere between 75 and 100 years. It really comes down to the material that the pipe is made out of. Obviously, our old cast iron water mains don't have the same lifespan as a new PVC pipe. So newer technology, we've got longer lifespans, but and some of the older technology has less of a lifespan for the pipe systems.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Councilor McPherson. And I have Councilor Dodge.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. So kind of piggybacking a little bit on what Councilor McPherson already said, I know that when we're doing the, new developments and whatnot, a lot of times it's not so much the new developments that feel the backflow of the development. It's downstream, kind of like in the north end. If you recall looking at that thing, we have quite a few breaks there. And I know that water, everything flows down, and we're kind of down. So is there any plans in place to start alleviating some of the breaks that we're having in the north end?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair. So the way that we look at water main breaks, it's generally an average of, we look at the age of pipe, the pipe material, like I mentioned, that determines the how long a pipe's going to last. And we also look at water main breaks. So if we have one water main break and it's the only water main break that we have in 10 years or 20 years, it's not generally a concern. If we have water main breaks on a section of pipe, we have 5 water main breaks over 6 years or 7 years, that's where we start to get concerned about the integrity of the system. So we do look at that, and through our asset management plan and through our practices that we have in place, we are getting better at identifying where we should be addressing our capital needs to replace that infrastructure. I noticed Daryl has come on the screen, so he may have some information to add to that as well.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Anthony did cover most of it, but we do some proactive testing for water main. There's technologies now out there that allow us to do leak detection without actually having to dig up the water main to check that. So we have been slowly moving into that field as we become more proactive in our approach in water main breaks. So what the plan is to hopefully catch some of those issues before they become a big issue and actually impact the residents and the property owners.
Okay, so just for clarification, you're saying we're now proactive, not reactive. And so what Mr. Martucci said about, and I'm sorry if I just killed your name there, about, depending on how many times that's broken or whatever, is that kind of like we're not looking at that anymore? We're looking at where we need it, whether or not it's been breaking sort of thing?
Through the chair, no, that's just to clarify. We are becoming more proactive in our leak detection. So what Anthony said is still correct. Okay. Because if we're having the number of leaks in a pipe as a determining factor as to whether we're going to replace that pipe or not. But what I'm saying is we are catching leaks when they're smaller and less of a problem. So if you, we're not completely proactive. I don't want to give the impression that we've moved away from reactive, because we're not. We're just getting into this. But the whole idea is it's easy to get a valve or a pipe that's just got a small leak into it. It's a quick repair. It's a clamp over the water main, whereas you have a water main blowout and then you're replacing sections of the pipe. So what we're trying to do is catch those incidents where we can do fast, quick repairs and help mitigate any impact to the residents and the property owners.
Thank you. And then just one last question, because everyone asked really good questions already, but we're trying to get into the multi-year budgeting. So will the water and wastewater, will that go into that as well, or will this be something that we look at every year still?
Director?
Yeah, thank you, through you, Mr. Chair, to the councillor. Our intent is to also have a multi-year budget for the water and wastewater. With the multi-year budgeting, there is a reconfirmation process. So if there'll be specific parameters that we put in to the development of those multi-year budgets, and where we may need to do more than a reconfirmation. I think with the water and wastewater, because of the relationship of the system between the city and the region, that we'll have to be cautious of those parameters that we put within there. But I do think with, our multi-year water and wastewater financial plan, and now that also coming on board with regards to the wastewater system, I do think that we have a lot of really good information to support our budget development and the system. So I am comfortable with us moving forward with multi-year budgeting for the water and wastewater system as well.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Mr. Chair, can I just ask one more question?
Please go ahead.
So through you to the director, when we talk about the CSOs, when we first started to put them in and grant them especially, that's where I noticed it the most. But with the new developments that are coming up, especially the fact that there's several large ones that are going to be hitting our books, I'm hoping, would it be a good time to maybe add a CSO in any of those areas?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, I'll start and then I'll let Mark add any information. But so through the master servicing plans that we've identified are required, that'll be something that gets looked at is the capacity of the system in its entirety, and whether or not additional infrastructure is needed in order to help support those developments. And then, like I said, we're also trying to wrap up our pollution control plan, which looked at the needs across the city to identify any areas where we may need improvements in order to help mitigate pollution into the environment. Mark, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, sure. Through the chair. So I guess two things. One is the CSOs are really what we call like wet weather. So they only really operate when it's raining. Usually in the intense storms, that's when they're active, as opposed to development, which is what we call dry weather. So people are using water. So they're not exactly the same, and the challenges can be different. Obviously, we're looking at all the different options, but when it comes to a lot of the wastewater, more recently the focus on what they call source control, trying to keep that rainwater out of the system in the first place, a little bit like that councillor mentioned before about separating sewers. The challenge with these CSO tanks is obviously that's more infrastructure. So we have to manage more infrastructure in, essentially perpetuity. If we can get those flows out, then we don't have to pay the region to treat that water. We're reducing the risk of basement flooding, and we're potentially freeing up more capacity for development in existing pipes that are already there to kind of, since most of the development is infill redevelopment, right? So it's not that we may never need those type of facilities, but generally the philosophy is more, let's try and keep the rainwater out of the sewers as much as possible. Sometimes, though, that's not that one big project. That's a lot of smaller projects in different areas. So I guess that would be my thought on that.
So just to follow up on that, so my understanding is when we have extraneous flows, like a storm event, so when a lot of times when we bypass, it's because the system can't handle all that flow at once. So when it goes into the CSO, then we can release that at our, where it's not going to maybe push it into an overflow, right? To bypass at the plant. So when we're at, like, to me, when we're adding, and I'm not an engineer, so, but I know that when we're adding large buildings, large areas that are, solid, where they're not permeable and stuff like that, all of a sudden we've had green fields or whatever before, and that was able to go through the soil and naturally go. Well, when we start building up these places that all of a sudden can't do that anymore, that's what I'm thinking about. Those waters, when we have those extraneous flows, wouldn't that be a good time to have it so that it can go into a CSO when it's under development?
Through the chair, when we're building on the stormwater side, so to deal with the rainwater,
Yeah.
we're not really allowed to build new combined sewers. They're not. So we have to try and keep those systems as separate as possible with new development. And each development, there would be like a stormwater management plan for that that's designed to keep those flows separate. You're right, they're definitely with more infill, more intensification. Typically, there's a lot more impervious than there was historically, and that is a challenge to manage for sure. But not necessarily like a CSO facility may not be the solution though.
Okay, because I get it that we're not having combined sewers, but that's at, say, Ontario Street, if it's not combined there. But when it has to get from Ontario Street to, say, Port Weller or Port Dalhousie, well, on the way there, it's not separated anymore. It's still a combined system going into it, right? So, I don't know. Okay, I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you, Councillor Dodge, and thank you, Anthony and Mark. I believe we can put the staff recommendation on the screen, and then I will ask someone to move that recommendation, and we can discuss it afterwards if anybody else has any questions. Councilor McPherson, are you moving it? Okay, and a seconder? Councilor Ratliff? Okay. So, any further discussion on the motion? Okay, I have some comments I wanted to make just following the presentation. And this follows up on what the mayor and Councilor Phillips said. I think that communication is critical here. I think we will all find, and Councilor Ratliff will learn that, you know, water rates are going to be one of the biggest complaints you get. And it's a hard to understand issue because, of course, with taxes, I think people resent taxes, but at least they understand that taxes are paying for providing services. With water and wastewater, you do have that feeling all the time that I'm using so much less water and I'm paying more. How can that be possible? So I think Councilor Cisco or Mayor Cisco made a good point that I think we gave the wrong message about reducing water usage would reduce costs. It should have been, it's better for the environment, but I don't know if we can change that now. But I think at the session that, the workshop that Mayor Cisco and I were at, we discussed this and how important the communication is. And as Councilor Phillips said, I think we want to communicate that we do have lower rates than most of the other local municipalities. Not that that's any consolation, but it gives you some solace. We were talking about some kind of explanation that could go out on a media release, and also that we thought could be going out in water bills, with water bills, because it's something that we mail to everybody. And, you know, I thought we could talk about the fact that the water is very drinkable, as we talked about, in comparison to other municipalities. And I noticed in that chart, Lucia, when we talk about the other municipalities, that we still have some that are just 2022. So hopefully by the time we put this out, we'll have 2023, because it will make us look even better relative to the other municipalities. So those are my thoughts. It's a large increase percentage-wise, and I'm sure we're going to get a lot of questions on it. So, but we will have to see how council handles it and what questions we get. Having said that, if nobody else has any questions, I will ask the clerk to take a recorded vote.
Councillor McPherson.
Yes.
Councillor Ratzlaff.
Yes.
Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
And Chair Garcia.
Yes.
And that's carried.
So that's carried. There are no motions. Are there any notices of motion or something that a member of the committee wants on the next meeting? Seeing none, and any report request? Okay. There is no closed session, so no motion from closed session. So before we adjourn, I wanted to ask the clerk, do we have a date for the next meeting already that we can share?
We do. I don't remember what it is off the top of my head, but I suspect the city treasurer does.
Okay, I know we did, but okay. Okay, so having said that, can I have a motion to adjourn? Sorry? No,
I know.
oh, you have it? Oh, okay, my apologies.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the committee members, the next meeting date is Wednesday, March the 29th.
March the 29th. Sorry, Director, I thought when the clerk said she didn't have it, that we didn't have it. Okay, so back to, can I have a motion to adjourn? Councilor McPherson, all in favor? All right, so been dying to do this. Let's go.